Hello and welcome to another Shakedown podcast. With me as always, co-hosts Shez and Baxty. How are we doing, chaps? You know what? It doesn't matter how you are doing. Should we talk some F1? Because there's been a lot going on, hasn't there? Lots and lots, millions and millions of news items these past couple of weeks, man. Are we going to even talk about? Let's not even talk about Abu Dhabi. There's no point at this stage. I want to talk about Lewis Hamilton very quickly because Mark Hughes wrote a very, very good article for the race. Shezinho, let me come to you first. How did you ingest the article, and was there any truth in what legendary F1 scribe Mark Hughes had to say?
Yeah, I mean, generally, when Mark Hughes writes something, it's pretty on the money. There are a few different things to take away from that. I think the big takeaways were obviously the headline stuff that Lewis perhaps had some doubts about his own ability in the car that he's been given over the last two seasons, and who can really blame him for that? That he was still annoyed that Mercedes didn't listen to him over the winter between 22 and 23. But the thing that really caught my attention was actually he was talking about following Max. And he said that every time he followed that car, he recognized in Max what he had a few seasons ago in 2020. And he said, he has a car where it just does whatever you want it to do, and there's a meld between driver and car, and I think that started to solidify what I feel about what it means to be a great driver in F1. That it's not just about beating a car in submission and making a donkey faster. It's about finding that nirvana, that little place where you and the car are one. And it doesn't have to be in the fastest car on the track. It can be anywhere down the grid, even if it's Alex Albon finding something with that Williams and finding a groove with it. It's the same thing. It's being able to absolutely maximize both yourself and the machinery around you, and it needs both those things to work. And it's really interesting that Lewis is now on the chase again. He's maybe lost in the wilderness a little bit alongside his team, trying to find that magic again.
Oh, bro, it's that honestly. That article spoke to sentiments that I've been trying to espouse about Sir Lewis ever since Abu Dhabi 2021, I'll be honest. And Mark Hughes, being the god tier F1 scribe that he is, summed it up in a way that was infinitely more eloquent than I ever could, bruv. Baxty, I know you haven't read the article, but I'm going to read you out an excerpt and I'm going to get you to react to it in real time. So he's responding to Mark, the piece. Where I thought the piece really shone is because it talked about the dichotomy in Lewis Hamilton since Abu Dhabi, right? The fact that potentially, and again allegedly, that Lewis would have retired had he won that final race or that championship in 2021, and that Lewis is pursuing it. He's kind of emotionally stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? Because he's got all these other interests, but he kind of wants to continue, but he only wants to continue in a car capable of winning championships because he's there only to win championships. So Mark Hughes says of that sometimes Lewis seems wrestling with that dichotomy. Sometimes Lewis seems downbeat, slightly melancholy, perhaps reflective, certainly. It's as if he's caught between how his competitor's brain is telling him he should react to dig deep, help instill confidence in the team around him, inspire them like the champion he is, and versus how his emotional core is reacting to his novel situation and the call of what may lie beyond. Baxty, react to that, bro, because I think that's a bit good, mate.
I don't know what to say to that, to be honest with you. I think, Lewis is in a very difficult position that he is used to being at the front from day one. He's always been in competitive machinery. I think it's only been 3 seasons where he's not really been that competitive. And realistically, we all know that I think had he won that 8th championship, he probably would have retired, or at least done a year and then retired. But I think he is so driven to get what was taken away from him, or at least to get the opportunity to get that. Burns it so bright within him that he is working so hard to get Mercedes back to where they are. And we know that they've been hamstrung all year. They knew. I mean, I didn't realize it was quite as early as Silverstone. I thought it was the Bahrain test, but Lewis has made it clear that the minute he sat in that car and drove it for the first time, he knew the season was over, which that must be the worst feeling in the world. Worst feeling to experience that. And he's just trying to do his best to help them and get them in a position where they could potentially challenge for a championship next year. I'm a bit uncertain about that, but I think he is driven. He wants to do it with Mercedes. But I completely agree with what Mark Hughes has said there. He's got those two sides of the coin almost working against each other. But ultimately, Lewis Hamilton is the competitor. And I think he has achieved everything he set his mind to, apart from one thing. And I think he's the kind of guy that will not give up until he's got it. And I'm confident that he will get it in the next few years.
Here is hoping, bruv. Here is hoping. Although, I will say this again, and this is something Dana White, head honcho of the UFC, always says to his fighters, right? If you talk about retiring, chaps, then you're already retired. Like, you don't retire from the sport of F1. It retires you. And again, I've replaced the UFC with F1 there. It's not the same sport, right? But I digress. Chaps, should we do some awards in review of the season that was 2023? I wanted to get to that first and foremost, but I felt like we needed to talk about Lewis Hamilton. So many words have been written about him in the last 48 hours. Chaps, let's come to driver of the year. I should do this in reverse order, but driver of the year is the one that we need to talk about, right? Obviously, we've got to do it sans one Max Verstappen, because he's been absolutely incredible this year. I need to talk about him for a couple of seconds, but of course, we're going to talk about him throughout this. I want to talk about the records that he's broken, because again, stats don't tell the full story, but they do tell some of it. Let's have a look at what this dude's achieved. Most wins in a season at 19, most podiums in a season at 21, most points in a season at 575, most consecutive wins, highest percentage wins in the season, most laps led 1003. Those guys are on the radio. I found that quite fascinating, actually, the way he's baked in a strategy to optimize his chances of getting to that 1000 laps in a season. These guys are ahead of the game, aren't they? Dominance is an understatement. Highest percentage of laps led in a season at 75.7. Chaps, I will say this about Max Verstappen before we get to driver of the year, not named Max Verstappen. I think this is quite emblematic of how dominant he was. I saw that Max Verstappen, every time, here's the rules of Cameron F1. If Max Verstappen is not odds on to do anything, win a race or fastest lap in quali, I just bet him. I will just bet him. I just don't care now. Like, I'm not even going to I'm not even going to do any further tape study or whatever. If he's a decent price, I'm going to bet him. And for qualifying on the back of what was a nightmare free practice 3 for Red Bull, the bookmakers figured that Max Verstappen probably wasn't going to make it, right? He was still favourite, but he wasn't odds on. He was 5-4 or something. I was like, I'm just going to bet him. Baxty, Shez, let me say this for the judge and jury. I've never been more comfortable in a bet all my life, ever. It just felt inevitable isn't even the right word. It just came to me. Like, I just didn't even. Fastest lap in quali, Max Verstappen, 5-4. You're having a laugh. I should have bet the mortgage, chaps. I should have bet the mortgage. But anyway, I digress. Shez, I'm going to come to you first. Driver of the year, not named Max Verstappen. Yours is?
Oh man, can I tell you my logic? Because
Go on, go on.
there is a little bit because
Maybe give us a name first, though.
Okay, before I get taken out in the comments, um, it's a probably Lewis, but
Donate it. Donate
it's a
it.
very it.
I-
I've given it to him by exclusion more than anything else.
He's got his scrubs on here.
um, so the contenders for this, and there weren't that many, I don't think. But contenders for driver not named Max Verstappen, being the best, I've got here. George was a contender, but he had poor race pace versus his teammate.
Who
His
was a
strategy
contender?
course-
How do you work that out, Shez? Me and you're going to argue here. George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, was a contender for driver of the year, not named Max
Yeah,
Verstappen.
this isn't in any order, but I think he has to come into the conversation. But his race pace, often he'd get himself into decent positions with his qualifying, and then his race pace would undo that. Strategy calls were also a little bit unidimensional. So rather than thinking about what is actually best for his race, it was just how can I maintain the position that I'm in at the moment, which finally Brundle and Crofty clocked onto in Abu Dhabi. He was too crashy. Anytime anyone tried to go past him or he tried to go past somebody else, there was always a little bit of a, is this going to come off or is he just going to lose a front wing? So that didn't work out for me. Fernando was has to be on the list of driver of the year, but after a really strong start, when the car really started to drop off, he started to make mistakes, which is not like him. Singapore started it, then Qatar, and then Vegas, where he just spun on his own. This wasn't my Fernando, so that for me is enough to say sorry, mate, not this year. Leclerc was obviously on my radar, but he also was a bit too crashy, which we've talked about. But my biggest reason for not putting him in as driver of the year is that he allowed Ferrari to develop a car towards Carlos Sainz, and then had to make do. He still he still performed even with a car that wasn't
Did he?
to his.
Did
Yeah,
he?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Even with a car not quite to his liking, but when the opportunities arose for him to really do his thing, Carlos was the one because the car was built for him. Singapore is really the best example of that. Science was on my list as well, but again,
mate, well, just the whole grid, Shez. Why don't you like? Do you know what I mean?
But these are
give me the why for Lewis and Keane.
So Lewis, yeah, like I said, exclusion. I think everybody throughout the season, and this is from different teams, when their car was allowing them to do it, were on a level that you thought, wow, this is really good. Fernando was there at the beginning of the season, and Lando was there at the end of the season. And there was a peak in the middle of the season where Mercedes and Lewis were doing it as well. But I felt that overall, out of all of the contenders that were up for second best driver of the season, Lewis was the one that kind of kept it as consistent as possible, and maximized the results as best he could. It didn't quite happen towards the end of the season. Sort of Vegas and Abu Dhabi weren't the best examples of that, and Qatar was a big miss. But overall, the reason he got third in the championship was because he was able to maximize what he had more often than other people were able to do, even when the car wasn't at its best. Whereas others went with the peak of the car, and then when it wasn't there, were absolutely nowhere.
True. This is true. Baxty, talk to me before I kill Shez for talking about George Russell and Charles Leclerc in the driver of the year, not named Max Verstappen. The blasphemy knows no bounds. Shezina.
So I've got some honourable mentions. All of who Shez spoke about. Lewis is one of them. Carlos Sainz is one of them. Fernando Alonso is one of them. I've gone for somebody who I think you boys will probably put in underrated, but I'm going for him for driver of the year. Alex Albon. He's been unbelievable this year. He scored all but one of Williams's points. And the only point he didn't score was Logan getting a point in Austin because of disqualifications. He put that Williams in places it had no right to be. He has completely reinvented himself after the disaster that was 2020. He's now being spoken about in potentially being a Ferrari driver, potentially being a Mercedes driver in a year or two's time. Williams are determined to hold on to him because they think they can build a team around this guy. I think he was unbelievable in 2023. And I think, yeah, he could be a shout for underrated as well, but I'm going to put him a step further and say my driver of the year, Alex Albon.
Don't hate it, Baxty. I don't hate it, bruv. Who am I going for? There is only one, chaps, and his name, the driver of the year, not named Max Verstappen, has a name. His name is Fernando El Plan Alonso. Put some respect on that man's name, yeah. For reasons, I'm not even going to go too deep a dive into it right now, but for reasons that will become true in short order. Underrated driver of the year, Baxty. I'm coming to you first, sir.
Okay, so honourable mentions again. Nico Hulkenberg was great over one lap. Basically hammered Kevin Magnussen after 3 years away, but that Haas was just so bad on a Sunday. It was terrible on a Sunday. Good on a Saturday, terrible on a Sunday. I thought Danny Rick did well after he came back, and then obviously had his injury. But I think I kind of thought maybe Danny Rick for this, but I think that him and Yuki potentially both had underrated seasons. But Danny kind of had a decent drive in Mexico, and rest of the time he was putting that AlphaTauri where it should be. My underrated driver of the year is Pierre Gasly, because he has gone into Alpine. Everyone said he was going to get smashed by Ocon. They were like, no, Ocon's going to destroy Gasly, going to destroy him.
And he would have.
He outqualified him. And he beat him in the point standings. Now, the problem that both of them had is that Alpine were just Alpine and were in a race against each other. But he went in there and put his mark down. Okay, so look at the first race of the season. Ocon puts it in Q3, Gasly goes out in Q1. Gasly then scores points from about P19, whereas Ocon, of course, got penalties up the yin yang and just couldn't fart the right way without getting a penalty from the stewards on that day. And Gasly just very calm, kept himself there. He got a podium this year, so did Ocon. They both got podiums this year. Gasly also got a sprint podium as well. And just an amazing debut year, very under the radar for Pierre Gasly at Alpine.
Don't hate it, Baxter. Although, take this one to the bank with decent reliability next year. Ocon's going to Ocon will show him which way.
I don't think so. I don't think so. No,
I think Ocon's a better driver. Being honest. Not that Gasly's not rubbish. He's not a mug by anybody, any stretch of the imagination. But I just think I don't know. I think Ocon's ceiling is high. That's what my spidey sense tells me. I am going Alexander Albon. Has to be. I think he's like you've nailed it, Baxter. He's been incredible. I thought that he would make many more mistakes than he has, but he's grown into himself. Go and listen to the High Performance podcast with Alex Albon if you haven't listened to it already. And he's very he strikes a very vulnerable figure, does Alex, but I think almost in a weird type of way. That's his strength. And unlike a lot of the other drivers on the grid, he doesn't shy away from his weaknesses as a driver, right? As far as the handling, he spoke about the twitchy front end that Max likes, and that he was overthinking all of these things, and that ultimately led to his demise at Red Bull the first time round. I really like what Alex Albon has done at Williams, and all those guys speak about him very well and his growth and his coming of age of a driver. Shout out to Alex. Shazino, talk to me, sir.
Both excellent shouts. I really enjoyed Alex as well, and I really enjoyed. I thought about Gasly versus Ocon as well as my underrateds, but I've gone for a driver that actually you mentioned. For me, it was Yuki Tsunoda. I thought he had a
Sure.
season where, like, nobody thought he was going to beat the driver in the car, in the other car, and every time he did, when it was De Vries, De Vries is going to hammer him. No, it was a whitewash. Liam Lawson, I thought, was difficult. Liam presented probably the sternest challenge that Tsunoda had this season. But even in the 3 races that he had, Tsunoda had 2 DNSs. He didn't start in Italy and Singapore. Basically, there wasn't a race. And then when Danny Rick turned up, the entire newsreel was Danny Rick is up for the Red Bull drive. And actually, Tsunoda took him in quali and took him in the races as well. His drive in Abu Dhabi was superlative, I thought. And the thing that really impressed me about him is that we were talking about him getting 11th at the beginning of the season. And when the car got better, he started to really fire. And, Mexico aside, he was really good. The reason that I have to put him ahead of Alex was Alex is excellent. Don't get me wrong, but his ultimate potential is still unclear in that car, because one, it's still a back marker alongside, so is the AlphaTauri, but he was never really tested against a teammate that could push him, and the only benchmark he really had was his own potential. So I don't know what the ultimate potential of that Williams is, because we don't know what he was tested against. That's why I couldn't put him in as my most underrated driver of the season.
He's marked him down for things outside of his control. That's a bit harsh, Shez, but fair play. All right, talk to me, Baxty, about your race of the year, sir.
This was a hard one because there weren't many bangers this year. I think the 2 honourable mentions you've got Zandvoort and you've got Australia. They were okay. They were good races, but kind of like Australia is remembered more for the chaos right at the end, and everything, and the chaos at the beginning as well, with Russell and Hamilton both taking max. The middle bit was as you were, but there was kind of chaos on either side. Zandvoort, was a race kind of determined by the rain and kind of do what you must type thing. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but my race of the year was Las Vegas. Just because I think, I don't know, something about that track. That track looks like Spider Pig, but yet somehow produced good racing. The long straights worked. There was actually decent amount of overtakes, and you had a proper race at the front for P1. It was one of the few times we had that this year. Honorable mention as well for Singapore. Can't believe I forgot that.
Wow. Was just
can't believe I forgot that. But this was a straight fight between the Red Bulls and another car in Charles Leclerc. Now, Red Bull won the race. We could have expected that was probably going to happen, but it was still a genuine fight for P1. And then Leclerc sends it up the inside of Checo right at the end. It was a great race. And you know what? Despite all of the nonsense that happened beforehand with Carlos Sainz's car and the drain cover or the valve covers and everything else, it actually delivered a good race.
I don't hate it, Baxty. It sounds sacrilegious and oxymoronic to talk about Las Vegas as the race of the year, but it absolutely produced one of the races of the year, undisputably. But you know what? For me, the race of the year has to be Singapore for these couple of reasons. Shout out, by the way, to Monza. Shout out to Zandvoort also. Shout out to Las Vegas. But Singapore, for me, was the race of the year because it had friction and stakes and difference, and it crescendoed incredibly at the end there. And then we find out that Carlos Sainz was helping along his old teammate, one of his best friends, his golfing mate, Lando Norris, deliberately. Unbelievable. That to me, if I'm gonna compare and contrast the films, that was like The Usual Suspects when bloody you realise that Kaiser Soze has been Kevin Spacey all along.
Spoiler alert.
If you haven't watched Usual Suspects by now, then genuinely, what are you doing with your life? Shez, talk to me. Race of the year, bro.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Baxty. It was Vegas.
Vegas over Singapore. You lot, honestly,
Yeah,
sacrilegious from both of you.
The reason, so Singapore will come up later in my of the year awards, but but the reason it can't be race of the season is because the Red Bulls weren't in it, and when you're talking about having a race where it is all stakes, like what everyone wanted to do this season was to beat the Red Bulls, and Vegas was I thought the race for that was the closest to happening, alongside just having a bit of unpredictability to it. And the reason that I really, really like Vegas is because hopefully it's going to show not just F1, but Pirelli in particular, that this is what they need to be going after. That the way to get the way to have good racing consistently is to have a tire that degrades on performance as you'd expect it to do. The soft degrades quicker than the medium and the hard in that order, but they're not susceptible to thermal degradation. That's what allows you to have Charles Leclerc getting past on older tires, but then coming back again and repassing Checo. And there was a definite, if you took too much out of your tires too early, like Max did in the second stint on the mediums, it was going to bite you in the butt. That's what's supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be about the drivers managing thermal degradation. And I know it's a dumb reason to like a race, but just like Canada 2011 was a bellwether for how, or 2010, Canada 2010 was a bellwether for how F1 we're gonna get the tires to work. This should be the template for how the tires are specified in the coming seasons, and it's I think that's much more important than all of the aero and the technical rules. It's about the tires, and this showed what could happen if you get those right. And that's aside from the fact that there was a fun story at the front and a fun story throughout the rest of the track as well. And it was spectacular to look at. It just had everything for me.
Again, the word of the day today, Shez, is oxymoronic. I don't know how you can talk all that die-hard stuff and then talk about how sexy Las Vegas looked as a track and put Las Vegas over Singapore. And mate, how very dare you, Shez? Your die-hard card is revoked. Baxty, talk to me.
I just want to chuck in one more honourable mention because it just popped into my head as we were talking. And it was when Shez was talking about tyres, Qatar sprint race was actually really, really good.
Okay.
Because you had people on the mediums and the softs, and would the softs hold on? And then you had Oscar Piastri coming back, having lost the sprint pole. That was actually the best sprint race by a country mile this season. And yeah, just I want to give that just a little bit of a tick because that was actually a really good race. Better than the Grand Prix, I will say that much.
Yeah.
Oh, mate, yeah, well, didn't take much doing. Baxty, talk to me about your lap of the year. Now, this is a techie one.
I'm going to get both praised and roasted in the comments because my honourable mention is Lewis's pole in Hungary.
How very dare you not?
I know my Team LH membership is being revoked as we speak, and it's going to get even worse because I'm going for Max Verstappen in Monaco. I mean, come on, one of the all-time great laps we've ever seen. I mean, it was just. I think it was the only time in the season where he really flexed the muscles of that RB19, where he had to, he was pushed into doing it because he was 2 tenths down. And yeah, okay, people say, but he had the fastest car. Of course, he could make up 2 tenths in that final sector, but it was the way he did it. Just perfect, cornering, perfect apex placement. Literally, you could get a cigarette paper in between his tyre and the wall. It was an extraordinary lap. And I think it elevated him in my mind just a little bit after that. I thought that was just an all-timer of a qualifying lap. I know there's been some suggestion that he was maybe conserving in the first 2 sectors, but you put yourself under pressure to make up 2 tenths in the third sector at Monaco, and it takes a hell of a driver to meet that pressure head on and overcome it, and he did that.
You know what, Bax? This is techie, bro. Let's talk about this Max Verstappen Monaco lap, because it's the lap that you were talking about, right? Not sector 3. Sector 3?
Yeah.
If this was sector of the year, like, take it to the bank. Max Verstappen, sector 3 Monaco, not dissimilar to bloody, is it Jeddah, sector 1 and sector 2. However, I think that if you're judging the lap, I don't think it was Max's best lap. I think we overstate how good sector 3 was as far as the execution of it, because again, it's almost offset. It's made to look better by the fact that Fernando didn't have a fantastic sector 3 year, but I think we understate the cojones and the execution of that, because you still got to go out and do it, haven't you? If you're Max Verstappen, you're still bloody 2 tenths down or whatever, and have to overcome that in the V line of Raskas or whatever, however you did it, and I still can't understand it. I think Suzuka quali lap was an exponentially better lap than was Monaco. It just, again, the more that I watch it, and it's something, not to give away my geekiness on these type of things, but that is a lap that on board of that I will watch at least a couple of times a week, because I just can't, still now, particularly in sector 1, sector 2, I can't see where that dude makes a mistake. It's almost like the perfect simulation lap. However, I'm not even going to give him the best lap of the year. Yeah, here's who I'm getting. This is where it becomes the Fernando Alonso show, and I don't care, lads. That last lap at the Brazilian Grand Prix, mate, that is, there was one time this whole season when I spontaneously and involuntarily spurred to I was on my feet, applauding, standing ovation settings. The way that dude, the Genesis story and the way that developed, and the way that dude pulled that maneuver on Checo Perez in what was a quicker car, the craft and the devil, and not doing the F1 noob thing and the overtaking into turn 1 in Brazil, and instead doing the long play and setting it up, dummying and setting it up into turn 4, just like Lewis Hamilton did very famously at the same track in 2021. Chaps, I don't know. If that wasn't the best lap of the year, then I don't know what was, chap. Fernando Alonso, last lap Brazilian Grand Prix, take that to the bank. Shez, tell me why I'm wrong, bruv.
Oh, no, I can't argue with that. That's a really good shout. I don't think a qualifying lap was the best lap this season.
Is that what you had originally?
What's that?
Is that what you had? Is that what
it was, mate? It was close. It was close. I'm going to give you a different one, just to play devils. But this season wasn't a season about qualifying. There were some epic qualifying laps, and we can talk about them. But this was a season of racing, which, man, this is what I live for, right? This is what I want to. This is why I wake up in the morning and watch F1. You've gone Fernando. I've gone for another magic moment, and I can't even remember the freaking lap that it happened. But Max Verstappen on hards, Miami,
mate.
Yeah, when he's going from P9 to freaking P1, like how he managed to eke out the pace he did on those ridiculously hard tires and overtake everyone on the way there, and then take out Checo at the end.
It's not bad, that Dutch fella. He's not bad, is he? On tyres that weren't meant to be. That was a strategy that wasn't.
I have to put that in here because I've got a different I've got a different driver for drive of the year. But that lap of the year is gaining 5 places on hard tyres.
It's chaos. Yeah, not to mention. Shout out to the double overtake as well. Listen, I will here though. I haven't done any worthy mentions, but here I do have to shout Lewis's that pole lap. I think we've all done Lewis a bit of a disservice here. That pole lap was nuts, and again, my experience of that in real time. I think I might have missed it. I think I tuned it. Something happened, and I just couldn't believe what I'd like seeing that after the fact. I was like, really? That car's not ready for pole in Singapore. Again, another instance where a driver, a God tier 1 at that, has dragged the car kicking and screaming to put like levels, bruv. levels, lads. And with that, on that bombshell, let's talk about drive of the year. Shez, talk to me, bruv.
Okay, so winner. This is why I couldn't put Singapore earlier, because I think probably Science's drive was my drive of the year, because number one, he had an objective which he met, that like going super slow at the beginning of the race, knowing that nobody else is going to be able to push their tires or overtake him. There's an objective, he met it, he maximized what that car could actually do. And then he set the trend that everybody else was trying to follow at the end of the season with his little DRS, with his DRS tow rope, because everybody else tried to do it later on. George tried to do it, Charles tried to do it. No one could quite pull it off the way that he did. But to have the savvy and the little knowing that Lando's gonna follow him, I thought was just brilliant. But the honourable mention for me in that one is Oscar Piastri in sprint race Qatar. If you're gonna lay down a marker and put down a statement drive as a rookie in a McLaren, that sounds familiar. That was the drive. And in adversity as well, against a teammate that's not slow. And against a driver who's absolutely in his pomp, in his Red Bull. I thought that was a really, really, really good drive. But for me, it's Carlos at Singapore, and obviously I'm not going to forget Verstappen in Miami. But I've mentioned him earlier, so I don't want to do it again.
Mate, I think you've backed the wrong horse there, but I digress. Baxty, talk to me, bro. Driver.
I'm so glad you said Carlos Sainz, because I couldn't decide between him and what I ultimately went with, so I'll go with the other one. My honourable mention is Max in Miami, and obviously Carlos in Singapore. I've gone for Fernando Alonso in Brazil as driver of the year.
Yeah.
Because look, that Aston Martin had been crap for weeks, months. They found some pace on the Saturday. It was, I think, a rare weekend where Lance Stroll out-qualified him. He did benefit a little bit by having Charles Leclerc DNS in front of him, but he just perfectly executed the race. He got past Hamilton early on. He started chasing after Norris, and he just executed perfectly. He held off Checo for so long. So long, and then when when Checo went past Fernando, you're thinking, "Oh,
it's done."
Story of what could have been, and then he set him up beautifully. And I can talk about this because this isn't my overtake of the year. He set him up perfectly through turn one, did straight out the Lewis Hamilton playbook, and just absolutely nailed him. And that it was almost my feel good moment of the year as well. But what a performance by Fernando, and I think a worthy candidate for driver of the year.
Oh, bruv. You know what the joke is? I've scribbled down here Max Verstappen at Miami, because, again, as a worthy mention, they don't get much worthy than that. How can you nail your teammate in the same car like so easily with time in hand in a race where there was no bloody safety car? I still won't understand that. Somebody still needs to explain. Okay, so the strategy and the tyres didn't turn out to be what they were advertised as being, but I don't care, man. That somebody needs to deep dive that and give me the causality. But Baxter, you sold me on it, bruv. Fernando El Plan Alonso, and this is why he's got to get props, man. That drive at Brazil, everything that Baxter's just said. Again, probably the only, if we're talking emotively, probably the only drive that year that moved me. Max, as brilliant as he was, Miami kind of didn't. There was not a get up on your feet moment, right? It didn't leave me like. It wasn't a breathless moment. It was brilliant as it was. It just didn't move me to tears the way that Fernando Alonso's drive at Brazil did, and it crescendo. Then it was just incredible. Fernando El Plan Alonso, driver of the year, Brazil. Go on then, chaps. Talk to me about overtake. There feels like there's common themes running through some of this. Shez, your overtake of the year, bruv, is what?
Yeah, this is where Fernando's on it, and he's even my honourable mention. So honourable mention is Fernando on Lewis in Bahrain.
Yeah. Take that one.
That was such a great move.
Nabbed. DRS as well in there. Levels of thinking.
I didn't even realize this was a thing, but he got move of the month. Did you know that was a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move of the month. So yeah, that it came out of nowhere. You thought he's gonna get past him somewhere, but to do it there with no DRS and to just absolutely mug him into turn 10 it was great. Love that. But yeah, I mean the reason I haven't mentioned it in any of my other categories is overtake of the year is Fernando on Checo in Brazil. It just had everything, didn't it? It was the crescendo of a great race drive. It was an against the odds. After he's done the defense, you think he's done. He's done. It's over. And then just when you think it's all over, the ball gets his head down and just drives for it. I mean, this is like for you. Fernando's got a tattoo of a samurai on his back, right? This is it. This is why he has that on his back, because he's a freaking samurai.
Levels, bro.
Like when the chips are down and there's any kind of opportunity, he just will not give up. He will not give up. But as we said on the episode about Brazil, this wasn't like to say that this was a drive or an overtake, of just pure heart. It wasn't. It was head. It was, and that
100.
It was intelligence, and it was using your car, using the weapons that you have at your disposal, and making the other guy suffer. It was just to do it against Checo in the fastest car on the grid on the last lap in Brazil, and to dummy him into that first corner, to nail him into turn 4. Just how can it be anything else? I don't think it can.
Levels. I'll go quickly, Baxty, if I may. Echo those sentiments, brother. And the way it's the story, man. And people, this was around the time when people just started to get out Alonso and quote him saying that no more races without podiums and all this stuff. And Aston Martin car isn't being developed. That they don't have the same momentum that they had in H1 of the year. And then he goes and does that. That overtake was absolutely incredible. And the way it finishes as well, chaps, it's like the context, the I don't know, the whole was greater than the sum of its parts for that overtake and the circumstance. And I'm just, if you can't already tell, Baxty, I'm in love with it. Baxty, your pick, sir?
So I got a few honourable mentions, actually. I've got 2 from Las Vegas. I've got Leclerc on the last lap against Checo, which was a great move. I've got Lewis on Gasly in that race, which was a great move as well.
I have chills about that move.
That was probably Lewis's overtake of the year.
Yeah.
My last honourable mention is actually Lando Norris on Daniel Ricciardo in Mexico, when he just hangs it around the outside and says, I know I've got a quicker car than you. I know I'm on fresher tyres, but I'm still going to do you around the outside and basically almost outbrake you, which you're Daniel Ricciardo. That doesn't normally happen. And I nearly gave it to this, but I've gone for Fernando on Lewis in Bahrain because, look, that Aston Martin was quicker than the Merc at that point, but there was so much psychology in this move. This wasn't just 2 racing drivers going. This was 2 masters of the craft going at it. Fernando had tried the move. Lewis had then done him back straight up the inside, gone, no, I know your tricks, Fernando. I can read you. So Fernando has to go, he has to find a trick that maybe Lewis doesn't think is there still. And he's, the picture perfect cutback and then up the inside, just chef's kiss. That was incredible. And it was the fact that the 2 of them were giving each other the barest amount of space possible, but they could, and they trusted each other not to hit each other. And it was just picture perfect, brilliant, clean racing from both of them. But ultimately, Fernando won out on the day, and that move was spot on.
He's a bit crafty, isn't he? That Fernando Alonso. You forget though, Baxter, I think the best piece of that maneuver is that you shouldn't be able to delay. If you delay it too long, if you wait for DRS, but then it's too late to get the move done, right? You can't get the move done and then stick it, but he's done both. And I think that's the genius of that move, man. Alonso's, I'm happy that he's still around, that chap. He's, it's incredible. Go on then, since we've done overtake, talk to me about feel good moment of the year, Sir Baxty.
I had to get it in some way. It's Lewis's pole. in Hungary. That for me was the ultimate
done
feel-good moment. And like you, I missed it. It was during the summer. The F1 season was quite boring. The Ashes, I'm a big cricket guy. The Ashes was just incredible, and there was the drama of are they going to play? Are they not because of the weather? And England needed to win the game. But I just remember following the session and going, "Hang on, Lewis is really quick here. I should." And then I just switched over and I saw him go over the line, and it was like, "Oh my God,
Mad.
this was 18 months of frustration just for a brief moment being released." Just like you turned on the tap a little bit to release the tension, almost like bleeding your radiator. And it was just a short moment because obviously the race the next day went literally into turn one went horribly wrong. But just to see Lewis go P1 was amazing. And the biggest disappointment of it was that Bono didn't go get in there, Lewis. It's like, what are you doing, Bono? What are you doing? That's the biggest criticism I've had for Bono this year. People have been slandering him for communication. I'm like, no, you didn't say get in there, Lewis. I wanted that. I needed it. He didn't quite give it to, but it was an amazing moment. And to see the team I support just have a moment to be like, yes, it was good. It was good.
And you know what, Baxty? It's not my feel good. Listen, I hear your argument, bruv. And I think it's made more. Listen, throughout the season, there were times when Lewis wasn't even getting out of or getting into Q3 even, right? And there were moments when it felt like we were nearly there again as a Sir Lewis and Mercedes fan. And then it just, the bloody circumstance and the racing gods would just rip the rug out from underneath you. And that was one of those ones where that was probably the only time for me when it never happened. Although I think the feel-good moment of the year was seeing 3 generations of driver on the podium, 3 generations of incredible god-tier driver in Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso in Australia. I just think, I don't know, the picture, if there were a category for picture of the year, that's the picture of the year. I'm not sure we'll ever see that happen again. And I don't know, it just felt like after all of the acrimony of 2021, all of what have gone before with Fernie and Lewis in 07, I don't know, I just felt like it was the turning of an F1 page. And again, if you are an F1 fan, forget about the monotony and the boredom of Max Verstappen and whatever. Like, I think this is a time when we're privileged to see 3 of the greatest pedalers to ever do it, all in a series at the same time. Fingers crossed. Pray to the F1 gods that we see them in equal machinery next year. Shez, talk to me, bro. Feel good moment of the year.
Oh, I like that one. I like your podium in Australia.
A bit of thought went into that one, bro. You know.
Yeah, but it's not the first time that's happened, is it? Didn't that happen in Qatar 2021? Weren't all 3 of them on the podium?
That's true. Yeah.
Fair play. It's a good shout. Look at that, historian Shez.
But I can't argue with Baxty. It was Lewis's pole at Hungary, and I'm not even sorry. I don't even care. It was I did watch it, and he went into the penultimate corner, and he had a little tweak of understeer, and he had to take a couple of bites, and I was like, oh, he's gonna lose it. And then he comes out of the final corner, he goes over the line, it's P1. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. I had tears in my eyes, and he comes on the radio, he's like, look at me. And then Rosberg turns around and goes, oh, nobody could have gone faster. No one could have even got 1,000 quicker in that car than Lewis just did then. And it was just everything that I've been waiting for this whole season happened in that one lap, 104. Feel good moment of this season. And then, you know what? It chokes me up right now, even thinking about it. It was really, really, really good. Maybe it's just because I really love Lewis, but I don't care. That was my feel good moment of the year.
Don't hate it, bruv. And then story of the year. I will go first on this one, chaps. There has been a couple worthy. I'm never going to do the worthy mentions because then that takes away from everybody else's glory. George versus Lewis, man, that has been simmering for the longest time they came together. Now, there were a couple of times when they came together this season, and I think when we look back on 2023 with what's going to happen in 2024. I think this is the beginnings of a story that, again, potentially could make headlines next year. Two god tier racers. One's the young lion. One's the older statesman, 7-time champion. And I just think these guys are destined to come together. They want the same thing. We can't be friends, chaps, if we want the same things. And there's millions of dollars at stake. These two are going to come together again. And it will always make headlines. Two Brits as well, by the way, chaps. I mean, bloody no, it doesn't get much more blockbuster than that. Baxty, give me your story of the year, sir.
Story of the year. I had to think long and hard about this. I think one of the big, you've had like Honda coming back with Aston. You've had Andretti and all the teams, Lucky Sons, Rodin Carlin, High Tech, and all that application process. But I thought, no, what's been the biggest on-track story this year? And actually, for me, it's been the return of McLaren. Think about where they were in Bahrain. Oscar barely goes 10, 15 laps in. He's got to retire the car with transmission failure. Lando Norris pits 6 times to put air in his car. They knew they had problems with the car going in, but they didn't think it was going to be that bad. The only reason they didn't retire Lando, I'm sure of this, is because the state of Bahrain is one of their biggest sponsors. So they didn't want a double DNF essentially in their second home race. But that team got better and better and better as the season went on, to the point where we actually thought there might be an outside chance that Lando Norris could win a race, where Oscar Piastri won a sprint race, where Lando Norris got a sprint pole, as well as Oscar getting a sprint pole. And we haven't seen McLaren this competitive for years since we've seen McLaren. I mean, really, since 2012, where we are now also talking about the fact that McLaren might be the ones that could challenge Red Bull next year. They've had they had a lot of disruption, not just with the fact that they knew that they got the concept of their car wrong and it would take time for them to get it right. They had their team principal up and leave very unexpectedly. They've had to bring in Andrea Stella, who I think has done a remarkable job as team principal. And I think he's benefiting massively from having Zach Brown basically do all of the media stuff, because it means he can just focus and do all the job. They are continuing to recruit the right people. They've got Rob Marshall from Red Bull. They've just hired a woman today she's been running F1 Academy teams from Rodin Carlin, and she's going to be involved in the F1 team as well. She brings bags of experience with her. McLaren are getting serious again, and I, as a lapsed McLaren fan, I am so happy to see this. And that for me has been the absolute blockbuster story of the year, because my God, the sport has been crying for McLaren to be good for a long, long time.
Very well said, sir. Shez, talk to me, bruv. Story of the year.
Both excellent contenders. Look, I think story of the year has to be divided into on track and off track, right? And but the off track one for me is the one that wins it. The honourable mention to me on track, stewarding gate. I know it's a bit of a downer, but the fact that we had the issues with impeding, and in Singapore where Max got let off a penalty, track limits issues in Austria that were just repeated again in Austin. The ongoing saga of 5-second time penalties. There was just throughout the season, there were just problems with stewarding and F1 implementing their own rules that I thought were detrimental to what was happening on track. And the problem was there wasn't that much great happening on track either for a lot of it. So to have that in the background as well was pretty rubbish. And then the rise of McLaren in almost in line with Aston Martin's decline, I thought was a really interesting story. But my winner is an off-track one, because I love politics, and it's Andretti, because of the way that it opens up a schism that's been growing and growing and growing for the past 2 years between F1 and the FIA. And unless this is resolved with Andretti getting a place on the grid for 25, 26, there's going to be all out war. And I think this is where it starts. The FIA have put F1 in a completely impossible situation by accepting Andretti's application. Andretti have then got GM to come in and give them an engine for 2026, 27. And F1 are having to come up with a reason why they can't be there, why Andretti can't be there. So you've got the fans and the FIA on one side, and you've got F1 and greedy teams on the other, and they're just coming in for a little head-to-head. That for me is story of the year, and I can't believe we haven't talked about it up until now.
Well, as an F1 fan that likes my action on track, Shez, I haven't got time to be giving. I mean, we've talked about FIA ad infinitum this year, and I shan't give them another second of my life until further notice. Baxty, talk to me, bro.
In regards to Andretti, the reason I didn't go for Andretti is because that story's still ongoing. Yeah, it's been a big theme this year about the process opening up at the start of the year and then seeing the teams as they come in and everything else. But I think the Andretti story is still going, and I think its conclusion will come next year when we get a resolution.
Or not.
Or not. Well, we will know next year, because they've got to make a decision. Do you come in 25? Do you come in 26? There is a Concord agreement to be signed as well. So,
chaps, you want me to be super honest? I was talking to me old mate, Mr. Windsor, about Abu Dhabi. And initially I was super impressed that Charles Leclerc's his perceived 200 IQ racing brain. And Mr. Windsor came back to me and said, you know what, I just don't know about that stuff. That stuff to me just it fades to black. It gets lost in the roundings. And you know what? I think I'm going to take a leaf out of Peter Windsor's book and be 100% honest with myself and the way that I ingest F1. About this Andretti stuff, miss me with it, lads. I really don't give a fuck. I just don't care. As much, I tell you, here's the only reason why I care about new teams coming, and shout out to the Lucky Sons guys. Steve, absolute legend. Here's the only reason why I care about that. And a brilliant segue by me, pat on the back massively. Teo Pourchaire, Kimi Antonelli, Frederick Vesti, these guys need to be in F1, and the more teams that we have in there, the quicker that we can get these guys, these brilliant guys, generational talents, the quicker that we can see them racing with the likes of Lewis and Max and Charles, etc., and that needs to happen, because Teo Pourchaire is quite good, right?
Can I add Ollie Berman to that list as well? Because
it's not bad as well.
F2 next year is going to be unbelievable. You've got Berman, Kimi Antonelli, who's skipping F3. I mean, that's a big boy move there. Victor Martin, Isaac Hadjar's no slouch.
Mate, it's going to be peaky. It's going to be.
If Kimi wins that season as a rookie with that
wins the
field,
first one, that'd be chaos.
For me, that's what F2's about. Like, winning it in your second or third season is great, but it's not the same as winning it in your rookie year. And the guys that have gone out and won F2 in their rookie year, you can see what they do in F1. And I'm talking about the Nico Rosbergs, the Lewis Hamiltons, the Charles Leclercs, the Oscar Piastris of this world.
Did Hulkenberg win his first year?
Well.
Yeah, Hulkenberg won it first up as well.
He's the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, the outlier. Chaotic. Right then, lads, finally, talk to me about Content Creator of the Year, not named Baxty B or Cameron F1. Shez, I'm coming to you first, bruv.
I think it's been a really difficult season for F1 content creation because there's just not been very much to talk about. So look, my honourable mention is to the guys at the last lap. There's I think we need to give them a bit of a shout out. They do absolutely great work. The range of guests that Tomo and Niren get on that panel, some of them are better than others.
Let's go.
But it was really sad to see that they brought it to an end, and it's a Cameron, you talk about market leading, trend setting levels, and I think that's what that was. That's the definition of what that was. So it's sad that had to go, but I think in a season where there wasn't that much to talk about on track, I had to go for something that's in the past. Bring back V10s is always a good one, but for me, you're going to hate me for this, but content creator of the season was Disney Plus, because that Braun TV show was brilliant.
Fair.
It was
Technically
brilliant.
Hulu as well. It's kind of both of them
Hulu,
together.
yeah.
Both
Cool.
of them together. Just to
I'll give it.
give it to Keanu Reeves.
Fair. I don't hate it.
Yeah, that was good fun to watch. Brought a little tear to my eye to see Ross Brawn crying on a pit wall.
It was good. It was good. Although I'd argue that the first 2 episodes were better than the last 2. And if it was to be truly God tier, then you want to do that in reverse order way. Baxty, talk to me, content creator of the year.
So somebody I want to give a shout. He's not my pick, but somebody I want to give a shout out to is Arava, because I think him on the F1 game is good value, and he doesn't just do F1 the Codemasters. He does the manager as well, and he does some really great content, or biblical as he likes to describe it. My content creator of the year is somebody that I've only just come across, but I'm really impressed with what he's able to do, and that's Law VS. Don't know if you guys have seen his stuff. He is fantastic. Literally, he stands on a ladder in his loft and makes videos about F1. He is really, really good. He's got other channels as well that he does. But just seeing him talk F1, he kind of speaks my language, and I think he's got a style that I really engage with. I really like his stuff, and I want to give him a shout out because he's a really good content creator. Is Lord VS.
Yeah, fair. I don't hate Law. Law's a decent shout there. Right, I'm going to be super boring, lads. Shout out to friends of the channel: Tomo, Aldas, Nasha of Quickstop F1, all who have been killing it. Who else? You know what? This is controversial, but I don't care. Rocket powered Mohawk makes me laugh each and every single time. As rogue as that dude is, because he says some crazy SH1T. He does. Listen, there's always a giggle in there. But chaps, I've got, bloody no, I'm missing out loads. Pit Stop Fracker boys, shout out Peter, shout out Mahad, killing it. And again, like you said, Shez, this has been a year where it's not been 2021. It's not been the type of year where you can just smash out a video and it just go gangbusters, right? And in those lean times, there is one content creator who shines above, or who stands out massively each and every single time. And that dude, chaps, his last name is Windsor and his first name is Peter. Listen, chaps, honestly, listen. I feel like I'm doing this chap in a disservice, a massive injustice by even categorise him as a content creator. Peter's just coming out and talking about the sport that he's loved for the past however many years. He's not creating content. He's just having a chat, and there is a beauty in there. He's just talking about this sport that he loves. And listen, I hadn't watched any Windsor content for a while. Like I said to you guys at the outset, that I was just listening to his live, and he just drew me in. The love that he has for this sport that we call F1 just shines through, and it's contagious, chaps. And I can't help when he gets his racing hands up and starts talking about Jimmy Clark in like 50 or 63 or like, do you know what I mean? I'm just like, mate, I'm sold. In the same way that sports for me, chaps, is at its best when it kind of gets me to my feet, right? When you feel that fluttering of your heart, like Alonso's made me on the last lap of Brazil, like Peter when he's bloody getting in his bag and talking about the V line with Max Verstappen. Like, I don't know, chat. There's not too many people. It's rare that happens, and I think for that, Windsor's Mr. Windsor is absolutely worthy of some credit. Chaps, that has been the 3rd annual Cameron F1 Awards, mate. Yeah. Getting old, Shez. Look at these grey hairs, bro. It's happening. You guys have been legends. I'm going to wrap because I need to go. And avoid and divorce. So it's been another year in the bag, lads. Again, I feel like I'm being carried each and every single time by racing minds infinitely better than my own. Should we go and avoid and divorce, chaps? Go and spend some time with loved ones. It's been a good episode. Do me a favour. If you are listening on a podcasting platform, of which I'm told many of you are, scroll to the top, 5 stars, leave a review if you're listening on Apple podcast. If you're watching on the YouTubes, be sure to smash a like. Be sure to subscribe. Also, we'll be back same time, same place next week, talking all sorts of F1 season reviews, rumour mill for next year. Are Mercedes going to be back? All that good stuff. But between now and next time, remember, as always, please, to look but never stare. Peace.